Welcome to the Texas Values Report. This is Jonathan Saenz, president of Texas Values. Great to be with you on another glorious week in the state of Texas. Wow, there's decisions coming out of courts left and right. So as we get into really halfway through June, get closer to the end of June, many of y'all know if you cover and follow our work that the U.S. Supreme Court makes some of its biggest decisions or releases some of its biggest opinions towards the end of June, sometimes on the last couple of days of June, which falls on a Saturday and Sunday. So I imagine it's going to be the 28th before that. So stay tuned on that. We'll have a lot of updates, and we're going to be talking about a very important piece of litigation, lawsuit that's happening in the state of Texas, and it's one of many. There are really a trend right now, thankfully, of lawsuits that are challenging the Biden administration on the Biden administration's efforts and desire to change Title IX without congressional approval. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail. We got some updates about our event in September, but also a connection point because on Monday, I'm going to be in South Lake Carroll for the Carroll ISD School Board meeting where we're going to have a lot of these issues come up. There's going to be discussion about the lawsuit that's happening in that part of North Texas. The following day, I'm going to be in Fort Worth. Our board member Vince Puente and his lovely wife Mona are hosting an event for us at their home. I'm going to be in Granbury on Saturday, and I've got some updates from some of our work. We're doing a celebration of life event on Monday, June 24th here in the Austin area. If you're near our office and you want free Chick-fil-A and Kona Ice, come by. We're going to be celebrating 2 years since Roe versus Wade was overturned. Texas case, by the way, that got overturned. We'll get into more detail about that later. But I want to jump right in with our guest because this is timely. We are involved in some major issues, not only in Texas, but that are happening across the country. And I'm so excited about it, too, because I know our friend Riley Gaines has been out there talking about this issue, the Save Women's Sports issue. But this issue touches much more than sports. When you talk about changing the definition of sex, you talk about the Biden administration trying to push LGBT ideology in different aspects of our lives and culture, but specifically in K through 12 schools. And someone who knows a lot about that's going to be our guest today. Matthew Hoffman is legal counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom. He also serves as a part of their team for the Center for Academic Freedom. He has his law degree from Notre Dame and undergrad from Georgetown University. And I found out in our little warm-up that he went to school in Texas many years ago in high school. There's always a Texas connection a lot of times. You know, I'm just saying. Matthew, great to have you on the Texas Values Report.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Well, look, I'm excited for the work that Alliance Defending Freedom is doing. You may not know this. I'm a former client. I was writing about this earlier today. 20 years ago, well, I guess it's been about that long, a little bit more. I was a client when I was a student at the University of Houston getting my law degree, and so I continue to be a fan of Alliance Defending Freedom and the great work that they've done over the years. And I continue to see this effort not only in Texas but across the country and how you guys position yourselves. It's not just one lawsuit. It can be sort of a series of lawsuits. You know, sadly, there are a lot of elements that we sort of have to address sometimes when we're going up against the federal government. But, you know, look, one of those is right here in the state of Texas, and I know you're involved in that. Before we get into some details about that, though, tell our friends that are watching and listening, some on Facebook, YouTube, some through our podcast, a little bit about Alliance Defending Freedom and the work that y'all do.
Absolutely. Alliance Defending Freedom is, as our name suggests, alliance building network and public interest law firm that represents all its clients in court free of charge. We work to defend foundational freedoms like free speech, free exercise of religion, defend life, and defend conscience protections for people nationwide.
Well, look, and it's been going on for quite a while. I see here also in your bio that you are a Blackstone Fellow. Wonderful program that Alliance Defending Freedom has for up-and-coming college students, primarily law students, some that have spent some time with us as interns here at Texas Values. So Carroll ISD, and this is me being in Texas. A lot of people in Texas, they're like Carroll ISD. South Lake, Carroll ISD, you know, for those high school football fans of us out there that know this school that has this tradition of doing well in athletics. A lot of times people don't realize that it's Carroll ISD. They don't put the two together. But nonetheless, in the North Texas area, a very prominent, large school district. You know, I would say somewhat conservative, maybe strong conservative area, if you will, but some strong leadership on that school board, and one that gets a lot of notoriety. So when they do something, whether it's in athletics or in some other type of arena or setting, it tends to get noticed. And that's a good thing in this case, because Carroll ISD and their school board members and leadership are pushing back against the Biden administration and the federal government trying to tell Texas what to do and putting young ladies at risk. Tell us a little bit about this lawsuit and why Alliance Defending Freedom has gotten involved and is actually representing the school district in this matter.
Absolutely. We're happy to stand by, as ADF, stand by Carroll ISD and its strong board and in protecting its students, its employees, and its parents against the Biden administration's attempt to redefine Title IX. The board has shown strong leadership here because what the Biden administration has attempted to do is to take a statute, a law, Title IX, that was sought to end discrimination against women in educational opportunities, but to redefine it to include gender identity in its protections and thus really erode protections for women.
Well, and I was talking about this on the radio this morning. Mark Davis is a very well-known radio personality and broadcaster in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He's very plugged in on what's going on locally, and we stay in good relationship with him. And so I was up bright and early having this conversation with him. And, as I was mentioning, a lot of people, when they hear Carroll ISD, they're familiar with that school district. But it's interesting, Matthew, because a lot of times, and I don't know what the numbers are, but just in my experience and maybe yours as well, what we see in a lawsuit is typically we're representing an individual because the school district is not doing the right thing. So what a blessing in this case that we have a school district itself that you're able to represent. Alliance Defending Freedom is able to represent because, and here, obviously such a large school district, over 8,000 students that are part of this school district. And, this is, like I said, it gets a lot of attention. I've seen when Carroll ISD has done certain things and put their own policy out that school districts in the area, and there are 1,200 school districts in the state of Texas, but many of them are much smaller than Carroll ISD, but it can have that ripple effect. What would you say is the significance of a school district in getting involved? What does that tell some of the other school districts that might be looking at this and going, wait a minute, what's going on? And, is this something we should be doing as well?
It's huge. And I think you're right, Jonathan, to point out that, Carroll ISD is taking a courageous stand, and it's a stand that is really in a leadership position and to influence and guide, hopefully, other school districts to also stand to protect their students, parents, and employees. Carroll ISD has a number of strong policies, which I believe you alluded to, that protect women's sports consistent with Texas law, that protect free speech and free exercise of religion rights from being forced to use pronouns inconsistent with sex, and that protect private spaces for its female students. And those policies, they've made news and attention for taking a courageous stand. And I hope that they inspire other school districts to do the same. And in filing this lawsuit, Carroll ISD stands to protect its own students and employees. That's why it filed the lawsuit. But it also hopes to vacate this rule for all school districts in Texas and even nationwide to show that this is a radical attempt to redefine a law protecting women, and it shouldn't be able to stand.
No, I agree. And I'm going to share this on my Facebook page. If people are watching on social media, I invite you to do the same as we continue the conversation. Hopefully have more people a part of this. Matthew, we've done a lot of work at Texas Values with school districts and with parents and individuals. It can be very difficult. A lot of times people aren't aware of what's going on at the school district level, or you have people that live there. This is sort of what I experienced when I was a client of ADF's many years ago when I sued my law school, is that you can have people sort of turn against you, right? They're like, oh, you're making the school district look bad. It can be a really intense kind of pressure that people don't expect. Carroll ISD, very proud of their legacy. A lot of it's with sports. They have high-level academics and standards and so on. And so my opinion, that you've got the school board on board with this situation really shields the parents and individuals that sometimes it's hard to have that courage for them to come forward, to go up against the school district. And in this case, having to go up against the Biden administration. Alliance Defending Freedom is involved in a lot of lawsuits where y'all are doing just that. It is sort of David and Goliath. It's a young athlete, a young lady going against the Biden administration or an individual school district that has, a big law firm. And look, I know you clerked for a judge, you worked in big firms, you understand that side of things, right? When you've got some of those things in your favor, I think this case is positioned very well for success. So I think y'all have done a good job of identifying those things, if you will, those elements that can be key to success. Because once we get a precedent in place, that's the hope, right? Is that all the school districts will then have to follow it. And I don't think these areas are gray. I think the Biden administration has tried to do that, and other entities in Texas have sort of act like, well, we're not really sure what to do, even though we have state laws on several of these things. But sometimes they're being ignored by school districts or people that are pressuring the school districts. You might have seen this last week, or I'm trying to think where we are. I think it was yesterday or the day before. Our Attorney General, Ken Paxton, has put out a guidance letter, too, that I hope will help shore some of these issues up. And so a couple of court cases that have gone well, too, outside of Texas. So I'm seeing some momentum on our side. I want to be optimistic. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think you're right that it's difficult for individuals to take a stand, and especially a stand against the federal government. And so that's why we're grateful to stand with Carroll ISD. The school district educates students from elementary through high school. These are young students and vulnerable students, when they're using private spaces like locker rooms and bathrooms, which, the new regulations would allow males who identify as females to access those private spaces. So it's really standing for all of its students and to protect them. And so that no one individual has to come forward, but rather the school district itself can really fulfill its responsibility to those students. And then to your other point, I think it's clear that sex in 1972, when Title IX was enacted to equalize educational opportunities for women in terms of admissions and athletics, it could not mean and does not mean today gender identity, because what that has the effect of doing is actually allowing discrimination against women by allowing males in athletics, allowing males in private spaces. And so it's fundamentally inconsistent with that law. And I think that the courts that you referenced, have recognized that. There have been 2 courts outside of Texas, in Kentucky and in Louisiana, who have recognized that sex cannot mean gender identity, that Title IX would be inherently inconsistent with itself if it did so, and that have stopped the enforcement of that law. But it's key that it only has stopped the enforcement of law in those states that challenge the rule. So on August 1st, the rule is still set to go into effect in Texas that would redefine sex. And so that's why it's important that Carroll is taking this stand for itself, its students, and for hopefully to serve for other school districts in Texas to protect them against this overreach of federal power.
Well, we're here to back you up, too. We're going to be there at 4 o'clock. We're going to have a press conference at the Carroll ISD school board meeting. The meeting starts at 5. Our press conference and rally is going to be at 4. We had an action alert go out today. We're hoping people will join us. Going to be some really notable figures there, too, from around the area that are in support of what Alliance Defending Freedom is doing and the stand that Carroll ISD is taking. But we see it sometimes. These school board meetings happen, and the other side, so to speak, comes in, and they try to take over the meeting and really change or control the narrative. And so a lot of effort to get ahead of that with expectations of things that we've seen in the past. And so that's going to be very key. But you mentioned August 1st is when the rule goes into effect. Do you have an idea of what might be the next moment or the next case event, if you will, in the litigation, and an opportunity to put a stop to this before August 1st?
In the Carroll ISD case, we hope and anticipate the judge will rule sometime in July on a request. We've filed that preliminary injunction request to stop the rule from going into effect, and the briefing will be completed on July 5th. So we're really hoping by mid-July that this will be put to a stop for Carroll ISD and in Texas largely.
Well, we're excited because Texas Values, in the next day or two, we're going to be completing an amicus brief supporting this effort, too, that we're going to be filing, showing our support with what's going on with Carroll ISD, but also Alliance Defending Freedom, and highlighting the history of a lot of these battles and conflicts that have played out in public schools, and where there's been a lot of frustration. I mean, we have state laws that address some of these issues specifically, and other areas where, people may suggest that they've not been addressed. The federal government's trying to come in, but the state legislatures looked at a lot of those things before and has said no to these type of things, making it clear that the school districts have legal ground to stand on already. And so I think there's a lot of strength to this case, but I also know in my experience, the more that the public shows their support, the more that the school district knows they've got the backing of the community is the type of support and strength that they're going to need. Because Matthew, as you and I know, a lot of times these cases take much longer than 6 months, a year. Like Coach Kennedy and others we've seen, they'll go on for close to a decade. We hope it doesn't take that long, but we want the other side to know we're in it for the long fight like you guys are. And I know, listen, y'all have other cases you're working on in different parts of the state the country that I think can have an impact. Where can people find out more about your work if they want to learn what you're doing in Carroll ISD, but in other parts of the country?
Absolutely. ADF has filed and participated in 5 cases that are challenging the Title IX redefinition. We encourage you to go to adflegal.org to learn more about those cases and the Carroll ISD case and all the other cases that ADF is involved in. And you can find a host of information about ADF at that website, adflegal.org. And we always appreciate your prayers for our clients and our work as we stand for our foundational freedoms.
No doubt. And we'll post links to those on our social media channels so people can find out more how they can get involved and support the great work that Alliance Defending Freedom is doing. And listen, Matthew, it's great to have this conversation. It's timely. Monday's going to be an exciting and a great day. We're going to have some of our interns there. We're like, listen, you want to know what really happens in these settings? This is the time to get that experience and get that exposure. We're going to have members of our team there, a lot of support that we have in Carroll ISD and folks that we know on the school board. So we're excited about the opportunity and the direction of things. And we'd loved having you on the Texas Values Report today. Matthew Hoffman has been our guest today on the Texas Values Report. Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you, Jonathan.
All right, I got a few minutes left. Look, there's a lot more to say about this case and about this issue, and we'll continue to do our best to cover it. You may have gotten our action alert if you live in that area that we sent out early today. Look, it matters what the law says. The legal arguments are strong on this issue. We're in a very good position. But we know that sometimes that people can get the opposite idea if they're like, why is the school district doing this? Nobody in the community supports them. You know, what's really going on here? It is extremely important for people to show up at this school board meeting at 5 o'clock, get there early. Our press conference and rallies at 4. I think the testimony on this will be at 6 o'clock, an opportunity for the community and the people in that area to show their support for what Carroll ISD is doing. We're going to be there too. There's going to be athletes that are going to be there that care about this issue, people that live in this community, some elected officials that are at a higher level, if you will, than the school board. So check that out. Check out our website. We'll be sending out an email today. We're also going to be putting stuff on social media to remind people about that. Excuse me. And speaking of Carroll ISD, one of their members, Andrew Yeager, is going to be speaking at our policy event on September 13th and 14th. It's the largest faith, family, and freedom event in the state of Texas. This is the 7th year that we're doing this work. And let me see if I have my note here that I'm going to mention later. I don't know if this will be a part of the event. We're hoping we might get some really exciting people that we're going to add to the lineup. But one of those we'd love to see a part of our event is Dr. Phil. Okay, we were in the studio for a taping. That's all I think I'm allowed to say right now of a Dr. Phil show and segment. When it does come out, it's extraordinary. You're going to want to watch it and see it. And so we were excited that they invited us to be a part of that show that was taped earlier this week. I think someone had to get up very early in order to be a part of that. But Texas Values team was there. The more that we're allowed to release other details, we will. And look, we've got some great speakers that are going to be a part of this event. Representative Tom Oliverson, who's running to be the next Texas Speaker of the House, is going to be one of our guests. Have you seen what's happening to this doctor? Dr. Etan Heim, who is a whistleblower that pulled the curtain back, that exposed Texas Children's Hospital, because according to the allegations that he's brought forward, they were still involved in some element of gender transition surgeries or procedures or puberty blockers or something of that nature after the state had already passed a law to stop those type of measures. And so now the Department of Justice has come after him. He's been indicted. He could face up to 10 years in prison for simply trying to tell the truth and expose the lies that were going on at Texas Children's Hospitals, according to what he's saying. And so, and he's going to be speaking at our event, okay, in September. I mean, and look, I'm not trying to make light of it. I hope he's not in jail at that point. I mean, you see what the Department of Justice is doing against President Trump. And there's other people that have been involved in this whistleblower situation at Texas Children's Hospital. They're being attacked now. There's another nurse that's being attacked. There's a video out there. I think the FBI showed up at her door, right? And we'll try to play later the interview that we had with Dr. Etan Heim. I believe it was earlier this year, where similar circumstance. I think was he getting ready to go to Thanksgiving dinner? I forget what the circumstances were, but just sort of showed up unannounced. And so, thankfully, Etan Heim does have legal counsel to back him up on this measure. But, you're talking about some serious prison time and some serious indictment and charges against him. That's a whole level of seriousness that this has been raised to. And, there was the fear that it would move to that. But, look, I've been in these circumstances myself personally and also in our work. These are almost always efforts by the government or some large entity that is trying to shut down the truth. They know if people find out about this, someone's going to get in trouble. Someone's going to lose their job. Someone is probably going to go to jail on that end. Someone might lose their business. You think about the credibility that Texas Children's Hospital has. I grew up in Houston, which is probably one of the most well-known and significant legal communities in the world, okay? Talking about heart surgery, all kinds of things that happen there. The efforts to stop cancer treatment, all that. I mean, people from all over the world go to the Houston area to the medical center to get a variety of different treatment. Texas Children's Hospital is one of the highest levels of hospitals in that area, right? And so their reputation is incredible. It's stellar. And if all this continues to come out, and we find out that this is exactly what was happening, I think they're done. I mean, I think their credibility, and they probably know that. They probably know it doesn't matter how long they've been around or whatever people thought of them for decades, including myself. I've had members of my family that have received, some very significant treatment there with a lot of confidence. Right? And so if this information continues to come out, and I do believe it's true, and if it bears that it is true, we find out more information, we get documents and all that, this hospital could see its run end, and they know that, right? And that's my belief. They know this is what they're trying to protect. And you know what? It's not as if that is the reason we exist. But if they were involved in these type of things that have been alleged, maybe that's what has to happen in order that it never happens again. And other people see that, right? When you talk about violating state law, when you talk about lying to the media, okay, from what I understand, Representative of Texas Children's Hospital was telling people, we're not doing those things anymore. And they, in fact, were, according to the allegations that have been made by Dr. Etan Heim and now this other nurse, and I'm sure others. So the truth needs to come forward. It needs to come out. And it appears the Department of Justice is going to play along to stop that because they're taking a position on this issue too, right? We see this with them trying to change Title IX from sex to gender identity to try to protect these efforts, if you will, to have gender transitions on kids, to have body parts removed. This is a huge money-making industry as well. And it's become political, sadly. There are people on the left, or Democrats, if you will, that see the issue the way we do as well, that think it's an injustice, it's a travesty, that people should lose their medical license for doing these things to kids. And it's illegal in the state of Texas. This law has been challenged, Senate Bill 14, and it's been upheld by the court. All right, I just got a couple of minutes left, and I want to cover a little bit more ground, but these are important issues. Monday, June 24th, who doesn't like Chick-fil-A and Kona Ice, okay? And look, we're trying to make it easier for you, whatever we can do to attract you to come over, but the focus is the celebration of life. June 24th is the day that Roe versus Wade was overturned 2 years ago at the U.S. Supreme Court. Roe versus Wade, a Texas case that legalized abortion, essentially gave a constitutional right to abortion. I lost count. Was it 60, 70 million babies that lost their lives since the Roe versus Wade decision? So, and it's not, it's always kind of you think about this, we want to be sensitive to the issue, but I think it does need something that we need to be celebrating every year, right? We used to have a march. There's still a march in January, right? Because of the devastation of Roe versus Wade. June 24th was because in January was when the Roe versus Wade decision came out in 1973. But June 24th is when we had victory, when babies' lives were saved and once again could breathe freely and those hearts could continue to beat, okay? But, we also know kids want to come out, families want to come out, come have lunch. Come have a Chick-fil-A sandwich, cool off in the 90, 95 degree weather, and get some Kona Ice, which is a snow cone company, if you're not aware of that. Okay, I have young kids. Well, they're older now, so I know what Kona Ice is. So come by from 11 to 1. We're going to have some great people here that are involved in those issues that are going to talk. We're going to give out good information, but we're just going to get together in fellowship and take that moment and reflect on what a remarkable decision. I didn't think I would live to see that day, and so, but we did. I remember where I was 2 years ago. I had COVID and I felt like I was about to die. But I was toughing it out for that day because it was such a historical day. We want you to come celebrate with us. On June 25th, I'm going to be in Fort Worth for an event that if you want to come, let us know about that. And look, before the year ends, before we get to the end of June, we have a $200,000 matching grant in place. Please make a donation to Texas Values. Our collective budget's close to $2 million. Our budget goes from July 1st to June 30th. We have to raise enough money to cover the expenses that we've incurred over the past 12 months because the money doesn't always come in when the issues come up that we have to go out there and fight. So please consider a tax-deductible donation to Texas Values. You can make that donation. Please make it by June 30th at txvalues.org. And that's how together we'll protect faith, family, and freedom in Texas. And we'll talk to you next week on the Texas Values Report.